Although you were born divine, a system was already in motion the moment you opened your eyes, crafted not to chain your body, but to erase your memory of that truth. They didn't need to imprison you. All they needed was for you to forget who you are. This system hides in plain sight. It speaks through the unquestioned rules you follow, the beliefs you never chose, and the dreams they handed to you like pre-written scripts. Control here is not loud or violent. It's quiet, almost invisible. Everything around you was designed to shrink the infinite within you into something manageable, obedient, and small. Yet deep inside, there's always been a hum, a pressure behind your thoughts, a silent knowing that this life is not what it seems that you are, more than what you were taught to be. This video isn't offering you another belief system. It's here to pull back the veil and remind you of something you already know, something they've trained you to forget. The divine spark within you is real. It has always been. You didn't just forget it, you were taught to forget. Every trusted institution, school, media, religion, was never neutral. They were designed with one purpose: to bury your divinity under layers of fear, obedience, and distraction. From the moment you could speak, you were handed scripts about who you are, what's real, what's allowed, and what's impossible. You were given stories that made you feel small before you even had the chance to question them. And it worked. Not because you were weak, but because you were open, curious, and deeply receptive. They knew that. That's why the programming began the day you entered their education. It wasn't learning, it was conditioning dressed up as grades and rewards. To voice your personal needs, you were instructed to remain seated, to raise your hand, and to ask for permission to do so. Prior to even making contact with your intellect, they prepared your body beforehand. Moreover, once your nervous system had been schooled into obedience, they filled your head with history that had been rewritten by conquerors, with science that rejected the unseen, with literature that celebrated compliance and mocked opposition. Try to recall what you were told in the past. Make sure you follow the rules, show respect for those in power, be practical, avoid questioning, and don't dream too large. These were not only innocuous regulations, rather they constituted the framework upon which your space was built. Due to the fact that they were trapped within the same system, even your parents, your instructors, and the individuals who loved you the most were unable to stop it. They did not pass on the programming with any malice, but rather because that was the only thing they were familiar with. You are not to blame, and neither are they. It is not their fault. On the other hand, it is now your responsibility. Because the spell is broken the moment you catch a glimpse of it, you begin to come to the realization that you have been trying to live out the life of another person. You have been pursuing goals that were never yours, in addition to assessing your worth with rulers that were constructed by strangers. You have been wearing garments that have never fit you. Additionally, during this entire process, a more profound aspect of you has been muttering, "This is not it. There is more." This whisper is not a fantasy. Rather, it is a recollection. We are talking about the ancient code that is stored in your DNA and is just waiting to be triggered. For a very long time, ancient civilizations were aware of the truth even before structured systems began to drain society of its essence. The Egyptians spoke of Nida, which was not a god in the outside world, but rather a heavenly essence that resides in everything, including you specifically. The sages of the Vedas referred to it as Atman, which is the self that is not distinct from Brahman, which is the infinite. Not only were these maps, but they were also mythology. The modern society, on the other hand, reduced them to metaphor or disregarded them as nothing more than mysticism. The reason for this is that if you were to recall your own godhood, the entire control grid would fall apart. This is the reason why this information is not included in your curriculum. It is for this reason why the mainstream media will not cover it. As soon as individuals come to the realization that they are not powerless, they cease to participate in the game. In other words, they cease believing the illusion. They begin to disobey. It is not appropriate to discuss certain matters in public. Because of this, we decided to launch Insights Academy, a free newsletter in which we go more deeply into facts that we are unable to discuss here. After registering through the link provided in the description, you will immediately be given a free copy of The But this offer is only valid for a limited time. Due to the fact that this is the truth. Bills and obeying commands are not things that you were born to do. You are a divine being who was born into this world. This is not a slogan at all. This is a matter of physics. Here we have mysticism. This is something that is being validated across the board, even in the scientific and spiritual fields. A belief that awareness is not something that you possess individually. Indeed, it is who you are. If you are a being, you do not possess a soul. Being the soul that is animating a body and feeling density is what you are. In addition, everything shifts when you start to perceive yourself in that light, not as a consumer or a citizen, but rather as a spark of the infinite. However, knowing is not sufficient on its own. You cannot simply be aware of it. It is necessary for you to let go of everything that has taught you otherwise. To be accepted, you need to destroy the false identities you have created for yourself, as well as the subtle agreements you have made in order to fit in. Furthermore, this procedure is not necessarily a nice one. Affirmations of love and light are not what it is. Your mind is a battleground for a spiritual conflict that you must wage. However, this is the way things start. It is the moment when you come to the realization that the system was not designed to free you. It was designed to keep you contained. In addition, the only route out is entry. They are most concerned about your pineal gland, which is the portion of your body that they believe you are not fully understanding. Even though it looks like a pine cone, the structure that is located in the middle of your brain is not just another organ. A biological gateway is what it is. The third eye, also known as the seat of the soul and the portal between the physical and spiritual realms, was treasured by ancient cultures. The ancient Egyptians carved it on the walls of their temples. In Eastern cultures, entire systems were constructed around the activation of it. This is what Descartes referred to as the primary seat of the soul. Nevertheless, in contemporary medicine, it is treated as if it were an afterthought. How come? Mostly due to the fact that it does wake you up. And a person who has awakened is uncontrollable. They have no interest in that. As a result, they choose to attack it in a regular fashion, chemically speaking, in a low voice. Keep an eye out. These compounds, which are the most prevalent in your environment, were not selected at random. If your water contains fluoride, in your food there is glyphosate, in your blood there are microplastics. Both the air and the soil contain heavy metals. A single horrific characteristic is shared by all of these poisons. They build up in the pineal gland, which causes it to become calcified. That is not some kind of outlandish theory. This is in the record, reviewed by other experts, tested and tried. On the other hand, it is still neglected. The reason for this is that acknowledging it would involve admitting that there is a conflict regarding your perception. You did not give your approval to the war, a conflict that the majority of people are not even aware they are losing. The production of melatonin is without a doubt the responsibility of the pineal gland. However, this is only a surface-level comprehension of the situation. It accomplishes a great deal more when it is used in states of spiritual activation, profound meditation, altered states, and breathwork. You will be able to tune into frequencies that are beyond the material when it transforms into a transceiver. This is the means by which mystics contact with what they refer to as the divine. The access to states of hyper-intuition, inner knowledge, and multidimensional consciousness that visionaries have is achieved through this method. In addition, what occurs when it becomes calcified, it's not only that you sleep less well, less is perceived by you. Your connection to the signals that are attempting to reach you is severed. The canal that connects your ego to your essence becomes clogged with residue. Furthermore, the system flourishes within that static. The reason they add fluoride to your toothpaste and tell you that it is beneficial to your teeth is because of this reasoning. The reason for this is that they construct food to be easy to consume, addicting, and harmful. All of these endocrine disruptors and neurotoxins are present in your surroundings because of this reason. There is more to it than just health. The issue is one of awareness. Your assumption is that you are selecting breakfast cereal. You are, however, being led in the direction of mental fog. You believe that it is nothing more than a beverage. However, it is still another dose of sedation that is energetic. Also, as time goes on, you cease asking questions yourself. The patterns are no longer visible to you. After a while, you no longer feel the pull of anything more. This is how they achieve victory. Utilizing covert and gradual acts of sabotage. The irony is that you are still aware of it. There is still a whisper within you, even within all of that calcification, even within the years of programming that have been applied to you. you are still able to experience moments. It flashes. That peculiar feeling that you are destined for bigger responsibilities. To the fact that you are not seeing the complete picture. That reality is more expansive, more profound, and more peculiar than what you are told. This is your third eye attempting to make its way through there. There is still life, not active at all. The fact that it has been targeted in such a specific manner and with such widespread occurrence is the most compelling evidence of how significant it actually is. When it comes to reclaiming it, blind faith is not required. It demands a conscious effort. It begins with the elimination of the drugs that are intended to obstruct it. It continues with activities that revive it, cleanse it, and invigorate it. And as it comes to a close, you start to realize that the things you see with your physical eyes are only a fraction of what is actually there. There are more than 5 senses that you can use. It is not true that you are stuck in linear time. You are not a body that possesses consciousness. You are awareness that physically manifests itself in a body. As for the antenna, it is the pineal gland. When you finally comprehend that everything will be different, messages are formed from dreams. The confluence of events becomes data. It is intuition that becomes guidance. This is not a guess. A lightening of the fog is seen. In addition, for the very first time, you start to view reality, not only in the manner in which it has been given to you, but just as it is. Uncooked, vast in scope, alive and well. To go there, you do not require the use of psychedelics. You require unambiguity. You are in need of detoxification. You are in need of discipline. Moreover, the most important thing is that you should desire the truth more than you desire comfort. Why is it so difficult to get out of bed? On the other hand, this is the only way to cease sleepwalking through the concept of existence that someone else has. As one delves farther into the matter, the more evident it becomes. It's not simply about the lying in your textbooks or the presence of poisons in your water supply. Governments, corporations, and other institutions are not the only entities involved. Over and above all of that, there is something else. Something that is old. It is anything that does not have a title or a suit on its person. It's not only that you're living in a dysfunctional system, you are now residing within a spiritual field of battle. Most people are completely unaware that a war is now taking place. As a result, the control is very effective. The ancient Gnostic literature mentioned beings that were referred to as archons. Fear, turmoil, and division are the 3 things that these non-physical beings feed on. They are not monsters from the movies. These individuals are not masked villains. They are able to function through mechanisms, therefore it is not necessary for them to be observed. By way of one's beliefs, through one's feelings, you have experienced them. That voice that causes you to question when you are telling the truth. When you take the first step towards speaking freely, you suddenly find yourself overcome with anxiety. That dread that instructs you to be quiet, to maintain a low profile, and to conform. Sometimes it is not even you who is doing it. This is not an example of superstition. Frequency is the key. People have informed you that your consciousness is nothing more than the firing of neurons in your brain. Mind, however, is not a local phenomenon. It has nothing to do with your biological makeup. It is the origin of the problem. There is also the possibility that your mind can pick up signals that are not your own, just like a radio can pick up interference. Low vibrational entities derive their sustenance from human feelings, the emotions of dread, humiliation, guilt, and division in particular. They are not attempting to possess you, contrary to what Hollywood portrays. They desire for you to continue to be disjointed. Because you are wasting energy whenever you are not connected to your divine self, whenever you are locked in cycles of fear and excessive thinking, and whenever you are both of these things. That is the food that they consume. Moreover, how do they manage to maintain you in that way? By means of the structures that help to define your existence. A stream of tragedy, strife, and hatred is poured into your senses by the media. This is not to inform you, but rather to put your mind in a state of turmoil. Religion instills a fear of damnation while simultaneously promising salvation from a God that is external to the individual. The educational system discourages creative thinking and encourages memorization. The structures in question were not taken over. In order to exercise control, they were constructed, a gateway for the parasitism of energetic energy. Despite the fact that they do not control the show, the archonic forces have an impact on the architecture. The powerful are able to hear them whispering in their ears. These things serve as a source of motivation for the development of policies, institutions, and distractions that keep people asleep. They are not interested in having a populace that practices meditation, takes deep breaths, poses questions about everything, and recalls its heavenly origin. They are looking for a species that is overstimulated, fatigued, and reactive. They were too preoccupied with browsing and freaking out to notice that their own light was diminishing. Moreover, you might consider something to be excessive, excessively strange, or excessively far-fetched. So take a peek around. What other reason could there be for practically every facet of life to be designed to restrict your consciousness rather than to broaden it? For what other reason would substances that heighten one's awareness be considered illegal, while substances that dull one's awareness are sold on every corner of the street? What other reason could there be for the most ancient behaviors and symbols that activate consciousness to be ridiculed, prohibited, or buried? To put it simply, they are aware of the truth. As soon as you become aware of who you are, you disconnect from the power source that they are using. You are able to quit wasting your energy by being afraid. You refrain from responding and instead begin to observe. And the entire system starts to fall apart when you watch without feeding the anxiety that you are experiencing. This has nothing to do with fighting. You have been taught that this is about battle, but it is not about you. We are engaging in spiritual warfare. Awareness is the only weapon that is effective in this fight. As soon as you become aware of it, they will lose their hold on you. Moreover, what is left is something that they are unable to touch. It is your presence. It is true that archons exist. However, they do not prevail via brutality. Through amnesia, they are victorious in order to divert attention, via means of self-doubt. They have achieved their greatest success by persuading you that they do not exist while simultaneously working through every worry that you have. However, you can clearly see the pattern. When you see it, there is no way to turn back the clock. That is the first step toward achieving sovereignty. It is not belief. No act of defiance, just having a clear vision, having the ability to see through the illusion without becoming ensnared by it. And that is your defense. That weapon belongs to you. The shift that transforms you from a target into a transmitter is the one that you just experienced. The one that spreads the truth rather than spreading fear. They had no reason to chain you up in the first place. They simply needed to persuade you that you were someone that you genuinely are not. This is the most efficient method of exercising control. A situation in which the prisoner is able to police themselves and the cage is not visible. Initially, you were a state of pure awareness, indefinable in nature, without limit, absent any form. However, throughout the course of time, little by little, they shaped your identity. It is a name, it is a nationality, one's gender, it is a religion, one's individuality. You were able to believe it. There is no reason for your naivete, but due to the fact that they began early, to the point that you had no idea what belief was. They constructed a mask that encircled your light. After that, you were instructed to call that disguise me. This identity is not your responsibility in any way. However, you are the one who is responsible for questioning it. The majority of what you believe to be you is actually just programming that you have borrowed. The fact that you were polite earned you a reward. The fact that you were quiet earned you praise. Almost immediately, you became aware of the aspects of oneself that were acceptable. What aspects of the body required to be buried in order to be loved in agreement, including it. You altered yourself in order to stay alive. On the other hand, you finally forgot that you were editing. You have ceased to be. Initially, you began to perform. Artists are highly valued by the system. In situations where obedience and morality are confused, it flourishes. When you believe that your self-worth is derived from your level of productivity. Moreover, when you devote your entire life to pursuing roles that have nothing to do with who you are at your own core. The student, an employee, my spouse, the citizen, one who exerts influence. These are not actualities, they are roles. The purpose of these operations within the game is to keep you externally focused while simultaneously keeping you internally furthermore, the longer you remain hooked to the mask, the simpler it will be to exert control over you. That is why having doubts about your identity feels like you are passing away. Simply because it is in a sense. The self that has been built does not want to be exposed like this. Continued participation in the game, the accumulation of validation and the avoidance of rejection are its goals. However, the beginning of a true awakening is when you stop asking yourself, "Who am I?" Begin by asking yourself, "What am I?" for the reason that the instant you cease attempting to be someone else. While doing so, begin to acknowledge that you are the consciousness that is behind the person. The deception begins to flaw. Because of this, the system encourages individuals to continually define themselves. Take your pick of labels. Keep your profile in order. Build your own brand. Putting together a story. Apply it on a daily basis. This whole thing is a diversion, due to the fact that so long as you continue to play the identity game. In this case, you are not asking the sole question that is significant. To whom is all of this being viewed? Who is it that is responsible for the roles? The ideas that lie behind. The reason behind the feelings, it is that presence. Even so, not a sound. Aware of it. That would be you. That is the part of you that the system is unable to access, mostly due to the fact that it does not function based on fear, comparison, or survival. It is the case. On the other hand, that presence has been buried beneath multiple levels of performance. In addition, the more profound your persona is, the more work that is required to keep it up and running. The reason why so many individuals feel fatigued and have no idea why is because of this. More than just their job or their schedule, it's a problem. The act of pretending to be someone they are not is a drain on their capacity for energy. Each and every social encounter turns into a form of rehearsal. A negotiation of masks is something that happens in every relationship. Also the spirit, without being seen or heard. The background gradually becomes less bright. Still alive. Simply said, I forgot. It is not about putting on a mask in order to reclaim your authentic self. All you have to do is let it go. Getting better is not the focal point here. It is about coming into one's own. That means giving oneself permission to be unfiltered, free of polish. It is contradictory and still alive. To let go of the person you believe you need to be in order to be loved is what it means to let go. On the other hand, you should be standing as you naturally are. Being a human being at the same time as possessing an infinite consciousness is a transient experience. Not to run away from life, but in order to experience it to the fullest, not based on illusions. This system was never intended to accommodate you in any way. That uneasy sensation that you carry about with you, because of that ongoing friction. There is no disorder in it. It is your divine nature that rebels against confinement. The fact that the roles you've performed were never intended to contain your truth is brought to your attention by this. One does not require a label for the truth. There is no requirement for validation. To recall it, all that is required is some space. Furthermore, remembering does not force you to go beyond the confines of the earth. The only reason is to stop confusing the mask with the master, put an end to the persona. The only thing that remains is what was always true. Your mind is not the starting point for your spiritual awakening. Your body is the starting point. Considering that everything you've been taught about awakening points upward, that could sound unusual to you, towards the thoughts, concepts that are vague. However, the reality is that your body and your awareness are not two distinct entities. It is the condensation of awareness into material form, informed by the light, powered by external energy, and the system is aware of that fact. It is for this reason that it does not solely target your thoughts. It targets your biological system. If they are able to make your body feel lethargic, it is inflammatory, unfeeling, totally disconnected. They have no right to govern your thinking in any way. Even before the first thought occurs, they have already come out on top. Give it some thought. As a result of your conditioning, you have come to view your body as something mechanical, something that you have to drag through your day. This is something to push, put right, to punish. Or you could decorate, nevertheless, never as holy, absolutely not as intelligent, under no circumstances as the receptacle of divine potential. Therefore, every ancient spiritual system was aware of this fact. It was never a strain to carry the body, It was called a temple, not merely in the abstract. However, in terms of function, the same breath that you take, each and every cell in your digestive tract, your nervous system contains every single spark. All of this is a component of a live code that was developed for perception that goes beyond the five senses. In addition, they have spent generations instructing you to disregard it, to begin focus on the gut. Neurotransmitters are produced in greater quantities in the gut than in the brain. It's like having a second brain, establishing control of your disposition, your vitality, and the spiritual openness that you possess. On the other hand, it is under constant attack. These are pesticides, food that has been processed, the antibiotics, preservatives which are synthetic. In addition to destroying gut flora, all of this was meant to do so. On the other hand, to prevent you from having clear feelings. When your digestive system is hampered, your mental state becomes blurry. When you have inflammation in your digestive tract, your ideas become erratic. They do not want you to have intuition sharpness or concentrate on the task at hand. They want you to be bloated, not paying attention, highly prone to emotional instability. Moreover, they have designed the food system in such a way that it guarantees this. On the other hand, it's not only the cuisine, this is your water, your air, and your light. Own it. A water supply that is contaminated with endocrine disruptors, toxins from industrial processes permeating the air. Artificial light that disrupts your circadian rhythm and depletes your vitality is referred to as light pollution. Gahai, you are assured that this is the usual throughout the entire process. You are instructed to adjust, medicate oneself, to get some caffeine and continue on. In addition, when your body begins to break down, they provide pills rather than underlying cures. One diagnosis after another is provided to you by them. However, you should never ask the question that really matters. What is it that you intend to feed the instrument that is your divinity, mainly due to the fact that the system does not benefit from your lucidity? It makes money off of your disorder. Because of this, repairing your body is not merely a trend in the wellness industry. This constitutes an act of defiance. It is the basis upon which awakening is built. It is impossible for your consciousness to reach its full potential in a body that is suffocating in poison, exhaustion, and inflammation. When your neural system is in survival mode, it is impossible to establish a connection with the divine. You are unable to recall who you are when your cells are continuously fighting against the toxins that are associated with modern living. Freedom is not limited to the mind alone. It is one of a kind. In addition, every decision you make, every meal you consume, and every breath you breathe is either contributing to your awakening or contributing to your suppression. This is where the actual breakthrough comes in. Your body is aching to be awakened. Continuous communication is required, constantly adjusting the calibration. If you give it even a small chance, you will always be heading in the direction of healing. And when you begin to treat it as the intelligent and active vessel that it is, everything begins to change. You are able to think freely. Your feelings are all in check. Your intuition becomes more acute. Moreover, this is not a mere coincidence. Coherence lies in that. Your body, mind, and spirit are all aligned into a single cohesive field when you are in this state. When you reach that point, you will make the transition from living from your head to living from your entire self. This is the point at which awareness ceases to be a concept and begins to become your absolute foundation. The vast majority of spiritual teachings avoid this. They will tell you to meditate your issues away while you continue to consume food that dulls your senses and scroll until your dopamine is completely depleted. However, there is no way to sneak your way into awakening. You have to experience it firsthand. Experience it for yourself, in your own body, in your stomach, as you take a breath. This is the exact representation. It is not the kind that is good for your appearance. Rather, it is the kind that rewires your neural system and removes the fog from your perception. Due to the fact that the divine does not merely reside in the heavens or in the texts, there is evidence of its presence in your blood, bones, and breath. To find it, you do not need to go outside and look for it. All that is required of you is to clean the vessel that it has been attempting to move through the entire time. Not only is the breath composed of air, it is a secret code. Each inhalation serves as a place of entry, The act of exhaling is a release. Due to the fact that it is the most evident and the most consistent, it is the spiritual toolkit's force that is given the least amount of consideration. In spite of this, it is the most powerful. You have been trained by the world to hunt for solutions from the outside, while your breath has been quietly holding the key to your freedom the entire time. You have simply forgotten how to handle it. You breathe without thinking about it, but you were never intended to breathe without being aware of it. The ancients were aware of this fact. Intentional breathwork was the foundation upon which they built entire systems, and it was not just for relaxation, it was also for transformation. The breath is referred to as prana, which is the life energy, and it serves as a bridge between the physical and the subtle in Vedic beliefs. It is used in Taoist alchemy to circulate qi, which activates the elixirs that are found within the body. In the Hermetic tradition, the rhythm of the breath was considered to be the spirit acting upon matter. It was understood that every spiritual path from Egypt to the Himalayas was followed. You have the ability to manage your state of consciousness if you are able to control your breath. And if you are able to exert control over your consciousness, you will be able to recall who you are. The contemporary world, on the other hand, separates you from this. Living a fast-paced lifestyle, long-term stress, and shallow breathing are all factors that can restrict your life force. During the course of their daily lives, the majority of people breathe from the upper chest, never allowing their lungs to get fully filled and never utilizing their energetic system to its maximum capacity. The outcome is more than just tension in the tension. It is a closed circuit, such as a light body that has been short-circuited. In the end, you find yourself living in a fog, unable to access the clarity that has always been just a few deep breaths removed from your life. This is due to the fact that your breath not only carries oxygen, but it also moves energy. Not only is your body made up of flesh and bone, but it also consists of a frequency field. There is no such thing as a New Age fantasy when it comes to chakras, nodus meridians, or auric layers. They are maps of the energy anatomy of your body. The way in which life force passes through you is represented by them. Furthermore, where it becomes lodged trauma, fear, and suppressed emotion do not simply disappear. This is one of the most significant aspects. Like static in a signal, they become embedded in your energy body and become a part of you. Furthermore, while the energy is unable to flow freely, your awareness is also unable to do so. Your assumption is that you are simply exhausted, nervous, or inhibited. However, most of the time it is a dynamic congestion that is demanding to be relocated. When this happens, the breath transforms into medication. When done with intention, rhythm, and awareness, conscious breathing begins the process of cleaning the pathways. The sensations of heat, tingling, emotional release, and extended levels of perception start to come from within you. The reason for this is not because anything external is taking place, but rather because something internal is at last being permitted to flow. In no way are you contributing anything new. The thing that was never supposed to remain is being removed by you. And as the channels begin to open, an old phenomenon begins to stir. Kundalini, which is the name given by yogis to the dormant intelligence that is located at the base of your spine, begins to rise. I am not using a metaphor here. It has an electric charge. It is still alive. This is the unbridled power of your own divinity as it comes to life. In addition, authorization is not required. It is in need of space. It requires exhalation. It is necessary for you to quit outsourcing your power and begin utilizing the instruments that have always been right in front of your eyes. In order to get started, you do not require any elaborate rituals or outside instructors. You rely on your presence. Your patience is required. Having the courage to feel is necessary. Therefore, genuine breathwork does not necessarily result in euphoria. Everything that the system taught you to bury can be brought to the surface by it, experiencing grief, anger, ecstasy, and the truth. In spite of everything, however, a more profound reality emerges. A calm and unambiguous awareness that you are not only maintaining your existence in this world, you are here to experience everything to the fullest, because of your source, not the conditioning you have. Because of this, the breath is considered holy. A biological function is not the only one involved. This tactic is of a spiritual nature. When it comes to remembering the divine that resides inside you, this is the most portable, direct, and democratic method. Belief is not necessary for it. There is no intermediary. It is free. It is only consciousness. Because the instant you do recall this, you become your own healer, your own guru, and your own emancipation. The system does not want you to get this information out of your head. Your goal is to free the divinity that resides inside you. To begin here, keep your eyes closed. Exhale completely. Take a slow exhale. Try it one more, and once more. Certainly not as a method. On the other hand, as a reminder, there was never a time when you were disconnected. It was nothing more than you holding your breath. To be able to live in a trance, it is not necessary to be hypnotized in a theater setting. It is already the case. The vast majority of individuals go through their lives as if they were performers who had forgotten how to act. Locked into patterns that are so well rehearsed that they appear to be real. Come to your senses. Look down. To consume. React to it. Get some rest. Reiterate. It is not only a routine act. The term is programming. Not by use of coercion, however, by use of repetition. Also, what is the most hazardous aspect? It is camouflaged as something that is typical, as being completely safe, the way things are as they are. There is a belief that you are living your life. On the other hand, you are actually acting out a script that you did not write. It is the delivery system that culture is. Each and every custom, all of the holidays, every single day's routine. Although they appear to be biological, they are not. They were molded by a unique individual for a specific reason. Take a more in-depth look. Not only was the school bell a symbol of the time, but it also had another purpose. It was a form of conditioning classical. By ringing a bell, Pavlov caused the dogs to salivate. A bell was rung by the system and you moved. It is not because you choose to, but rather because you were taught to do so. And it continued even after you received your diploma. The shape has merely shifted. This bell will now serve as your alarm clock. The ping of your email. This is your notification from social media. It is all geared to keep you focused on the outside world while you are absent from your own thoughts. It seems like you are always reacting, not ever completely present. That was never the case. There was no mistake made there. The term is engineering. When you are more preoccupied with other things, you ask less questions. As you get more pressed for time, you are less likely to take a moment to pause and inquire, do any of these things belong to me? Keep in mind the upcoming holidays. Celebrations that were supposed to be about life, love, and family turned out to be rituals that involve debt, overeating obligations, and stress. It is expected of you to appear to spend money and to demonstrate contentment. In the event that you do not, you are the outsider, the rebel, and the issue is you. Take a look at the physical structure of things. Is it Christmas consumerism masquerading as compassion is unethical? Valentine's Day may be love that is conditional, is commercialized. October 31st, an event dedicated to masks. The greatest deception, however, is claiming that any of it still has a hallowed quality. There is no reason to celebrate here. In other words, they are diversion rituals. Repetitive rituals that serve to reinforce your commitment to the script. Invest in, to conform, to belong. Wear a smile for the camera, publish it. Please check for likes, and we may call it a year. It is not the intention of this to shame participation. It is about having a clear vision of it, mostly due to the fact that once you see the programming, you are no longer mesmerized through it. Your presence is still welcome. However, from a position of consciousness, it's not autopilot. This is the change that the system is most concerned about. No resistance at all, no act of defiance, non-participation in the trance on the other hand. That is when you cease performing for judges who are not visible. When you quit trying to win favor by elaborate rituals that are draining to your spirit. They are unable to sell you something, therefore you reclaim it. Presence is essential. Even the act of speaking itself is a component of the trance. Phrases such as, "That's just the way my life is." You also need to have a realistic outlook. Not observations, are they? It's a casting spell. Insignificant agreements that bind you to a certain constraint. You are strengthening the cage with each repetition of these phrases. As a result, the cage is no longer visible. As a result, it is impossible to avoid. Not unless you begin to pay attention. not only to other people. On the other hand, in regard to the words that you speak yourself, which ones are yours? On the other hand, did you inherit them from folks who never questioned them for themselves? Also, let's discuss about the rituals that are practiced in the workplace. Meetings held in the morning? It is the KPIs. The culture that celebrates exhaustion and makes it seem like a badge of honor to work nonstop. None of these are routes that lead to a purpose. They are loops that cause distraction, developed to keep you exhausted to the point where you obey, but with sufficient functionality to continue. In this system, you are not succeeding whatsoever, you're making it through it. They will continue to maintain this state of affairs for as long as you continue to confuse structure with purpose. For the sake of freedom routine, as well as the value of busyness, there is nevertheless a signal that can be heard despite the noise. You become aware of a faint hum that indicates that something is unusual. The fact that this is not how life was intended to be like. It's possible, but it's not guaranteed that you're living in someone else's perception of reality. It is not your imagination that said that whisper. Your intelligence is the problem. Your more evolved self. The sound of your divine presence tapping the glass from the inside. I am requesting that you take heed. To take a break must temporarily disrupt the pattern for a short period of time so that you can recall who you were before the script was installed. Only when you are unaware that you are in a trance will the trance be effective. Culture only exerts its influence over you when you are under the impression that it is yours. However, this is not the case. It has been bestowed onto you, marketed specifically to you, drilled into your body. In addition, the minute you stop accepting it without question is the moment you begin writing something quite different. There is something genuine. It is something that originates from within rather than being a habit. You are not required to run away from the world. Now, all you have to do is wake up inside of it. When you arise, it is one thing. To live enlightened is a different experience. The majority of people are unaware of that. They are looking for the ideal experience. This is the moment of realization. The sudden realization to me, there is a surge of cosmic energy. After that, they immediately return to living as if they had never witnessed what they had witnessed. However, awakening is not meant to be a fleeting occasion. It is intended to be a real life. It is not something that you go watch. What you become is something you are. And if you simply stop at the realization without incorporating it into your life, all you have accomplished is to amass yet another spiritual memento. The real challenge is the integration of data. Is it possible for you to bring the awareness that you came to during meditation into a heated argument? Despite the fact that the world around you is trying to get your attention, are you able to maintain your presence? Your own ego, the fears that you have. Is it possible for you to live as the God that resides within you? Not just when it is pleasant, but also when it is inconvenient, difficult, and even dangerous. At that point, the majority of people cease right at the beginning of the embodiment process, mostly due to the fact that living from your divinity requires you to break every bargain you made while you were sleeping. Let go of identities that have garnered you acceptance, as this is what it entails. It implies letting up of aspirations that were conceived out of a sense of insecurity. Moving through life with a level of self-responsibility that the ego does not want to have anything to do with is what it means to walk through life with. You are not a status game for the God that resides within you. Applause is not required for this. Whether it be in terms of likes, followers, or income, it does not measure worth. Pure, silent, and steadfast presence is what it is. When it comes to your decisions, it either comes to life or it is buried beneath them. More enlightened ideas are not something that the world requires. More awakened people who manifest themselves in a different way in their relationships, in their employment, and in the decisions they make on a daily basis are required. It is not in a manner that is performative, but rather in a manner that is anchored, stable, and exudes truth. You do not need to make a declaration of your divinity when you are able to live it. It can be experienced. As soon as you enter a room, your presence carries the weight of the conversation. It is not because you are exceptional, but rather because you are in agreement. No disguises allowed. There was no performance. Simply put, coherence. Simply put, the number of times someone has been aware of who they are and made the decision to live their life accordingly. And this is the point at which everything starts to shift. not from the affirmation of others, but rather from the revolution within oneself. No longer do you put up with things that deplete you. You are no longer have to reduce your brightness in order to fit into small places. You are no longer looking for protection in silence. You choose to live your life in public. The way you speak is quite clear. The way you move is deliberate. And you become a mirror which may make some people feel uneasy while others may find it freeing. Because the way you embody yourself brings to people's attention aspects of themselves that they have forgotten. And this is not about being flawless in any way. The main thing is to be honest. The desire of the ego is to exhibit enlightenment. Simply put, the soul yearns to be liberated. Furthermore, freedom does not always appear to be gracious. On occasion, it can be a mess. At times, it can be embarrassing. There are times when it's having difficult chats, choices that are not well received, as well as standing by yourself and your truth. When you make the decision to embody anything, however, you cease exporting your integrity. You are no longer waiting for authorization. You cease giving up on yourself in order to find comfort. Within a world that is constructed on deception, this is the most profound kind of defiance. Imagine yourself living as your unfiltered, wild, and divine self. Indeed, not only in private, however, not only in secure areas, but everywhere else. Because the system does not concern itself with your hypotheses. There is a fear of your embodiment. It has a phobia of the individual who is not simply aware that they are divine, but lives each and every day in the same manner, by use of their words, because of their routines, due to the presence of them. Another spiritual high is not anything you require. Having a spiritual spine is essential, one that is there for you throughout the process of your previous existence disintegrating. When the noise level is high, one that acts as a guide for you, that which serves to remind you of who you are, even when everything in the environment is trying to help you forget about it. That spine is constructed via deliberation, by means of practicing, merely by being present. To incorporate the God that is inside oneself is to do it in this manner, in no single day, not in the future, but at this moment. Once you reach a certain point in your awakening path, you will stop looking for answers. However, this is not because you have given up. Rather, it is because you have finally grasped that there is nothing missing. It was the item that you were trying to find, the truth that you were attempting to comprehend. This is the version of yourself that you have been anticipating becoming. Was present throughout the entire process. It is not hidden in some faraway dimension or in a philosophy that is uncommon. Nevertheless, just below every distraction, lie after lie, all of the layers of programming that they instructed you to call reality for. Your divine nature has never been shaken. You have just stopped seeking for the location where it resides, on the inside. It is the last time that we will remember. As soon as the seeker is no longer present, the instant that the God who resides within stops muttering, and then you begin to speak. Not in the midst of a show fire or thunder, however in the absence of sound, while present. When you are alone, you are aware that you are the awareness that is behind everything. A witness who is the source of the thoughts, the space in which everything emerges and disappears when it is not present. In no way were you a character. It is a job, is a body, perhaps a tale. You had been, and this is always the case. The limitless mind that makes the decision to have a fleeting experience through a shape that is limited in size. In addition, keep in mind that a peculiar occurrence takes place. You are no longer required to engage in combat. You quit making an effort to persuade. As a result of your agreement to forget, you are able to quit struggling with systems that have only ever held power. As soon as you decide to withdraw from that arrangement, the illusion is beginning to break apart. It's not just the outside. The interior, however. Fears do not disappear completely. Then, however, they lose their hold. Concerns that you have do not go away. However, you are no longer defined by them. In the past, you have not changed, but it will no longer possess you. Within the dream, you experience lucidity. That is exactly what this has been all along. As a dream, it is compelling, comprehensive, really lovely. How terrifying, holy dream. You are not to flee, to awaken from the depths of that. And now I will say, it appears that you are awake, in a manner that is not aesthetic, but rather performative and spiritual. However, in the lived context, reminding yourself breath by breath that you are not the events that occur to you. You are the one who is the source of the event. And from that vantage point, you do not simply respond to the world around you. This is how the world reacts to you, simply because the divine does not observe from a distance. It goes through the experience of you, and what happens after that one is alive. But not in the same way as before. In order to gain acceptance, you do not play roles. You do not perform for the sake of receiving acclaim. You do not shrink in order to be safe. You live as the embodiment of truth. It is moment to moment. When you choose relationships, you make sure they respect your growth. You nourish yourself with food that honors your clarity. You speak words that align with your frequency. You guard your energy as if it were sacred because it is. That's the reason. You are the creator. Rest in that knowing. You are connected always. Remember this. And so sometimes you wait, not because something grand is coming, not because a savior is arriving. There is no Messiah, no event, no guru. Freedom won't be handed to you at the finish line. You already are what you've been seeking. You already hold what you thought was missing. The only thing between you and that truth is the illusion that you still need to become more. You don't. You simply need to release more. When you live from this place, others will notice. Not because you shout louder, but because you stand clearer. You'll speak a language most have forgotten, the silent language of presence. Some will avoid you because your light unsettles the peace they found in their shadows. Others will be drawn in without knowing why. But it won't matter because you're not here to convince. You're here to be. That is the gift. That is the purpose. That is reality. If you haven't yet joined Insights Academy, now is the time. You're not just missing deeper teachings, you're missing a faster path back to what you already know. And yes, the free Cabellian copy is still available for now. You were never meant to shrink. You were never meant to stay silent. You were never meant to live a life of quiet wonder and controlled obedience. Your being was designed to be electric, unruly, infinite. You came to this world as a living expression of Source itself. This is not metaphor. This is truth. And no system, no label, no conditioning can ever change that. The divine within you has waited patiently, and now you remember. If this message resonated, leave a comment below. It resonated with me.